For folks that don't know me, my name is Dr. William Clark, and I happen to be, and gratefully, the principal of Eli Patrick and Co. There's a wonderful long story behind that name, that company. But the short story is, most people ask me where did that name come from, and I'll spare you the opportunity of asking. I'll just tell you. It comes from my father's middle name and my middle name. My dad, who passed away last year, about a year and a half ago, he was an inspiration to a lot of what you're about to see and hear. And there are stories behind why and how we built Eli Patrick. But we are a fundraising company. We support nonprofits around the country in the areas of strategic planning, fundraising planning, developing master grant applications, leadership development, and a few other products that we offer to our customers. We deeply believe in the importance of nonprofits becoming sustainable. My doctoral work, if you follow my website or click on any of the links that you have available, my doctoral work, sustainability, focuses on the idea that nonprofits, particularly black-led nonprofits, should be focused on sustaining their efforts. It's a bad sign when you open up your doors, do all the great work to launch your nonprofit, and then you don't have enough money to pay the bills and to pay staff. While, yeah, there's kind of a reputational harm that happens when you do that and you close doors because you don't have enough money, the biggest harm that takes place is when we close doors and it hurts the community that we serve. And so my work focuses on sustainability, generating revenue from different sources. I don't go on the fringe of certain revenue ideas, so I focus on obviously grant writing, fundraising, but I'm a big believer in earned income, and that is the capacity of a nonprofit to compete in the marketplace and raise money. Now, as we get started, today, the information I'm going to share with you is based upon real world experiences that I have cultivated over the years. But one particular customer that I worked with for a few months with what I'm about to share with you was able to raise, what did I have up here? 2.6 million in just a short period of time. What I'm not going to talk about, but I'll share now, is how we did it. Part of that, about $800,000 of that, came from just email and text messages between us and a funder, somebody that we have a really strong relationship with. I'll explain how that works in a little bit. The remainder of that 1.8 came from just really hard work and strategizing. So I'm going to go through all of that. As I talk about how to raise millions, please do your best to log your questions along the way so that when we get to Q&A in about 20, 25 minutes, we'll be able to have a robust conversation. Does that work for everybody? Let's get started. Now, when people begin to raise money for their nonprofits, what I'm about to share with you is not unique to large nonprofits. And even though I specifically support nonprofits that have over $100,000 budget, what I'm about to share with you are tactics and strategies that I used when I was leading small nonprofits and rebuilding teams within nonprofits. And what I mean by that is within a multi-million dollar nonprofit, some of you may have experience being assigned or hired to a team that has a budget less than $100,000 or is rebuilding or starting from scratch. Some of you may be leading organizations that are at or below $100,000. Regardless of your revenue, these strategies continue to work. They have worked, they continue to work, and they will always work. So please, as you're listening to this, take into context or think about these things in context of your organization. Now, there are three secrets to raising money. The first one on the screen is strategy. I have to be clear with you. Strategy is the slowest way to raise money. Now, the reason why strategy is the slowest way to raise money is simply because of the bureaucracy that's involved with strategic planning. So when you get engaged in effective strategic planning, you're dealing with organizations, obviously your board, your team, your stakeholders. You're also dealing with outside stakeholders, your investors, i.e. your funders, your community, and people that care about you. If you go through a quality planning process, it likely will take 6 to 9 months. Now, yes, you can develop a strategic plan in short order if you need to. Someone like myself, if you hire a consultant, we can help you develop one rather quickly. But a quality plan that's inclusive of every piece of information that matters to your strategy over the next 3 to 5 years will take some time. What I have learned over time about strategy, even as I've led teams, even though as the leader and the one who's influencing the organization and has brought a vision, it's really helpful for me as a leader to share the burden and responsibility of planning. My vision is super clear. My vision about what I want to accomplish as a leader cannot be swayed or dissuaded. However, the team that supports me doesn't see the vision as clearly as I do. Now, as a teacher, as a leader, as the one influencing the organization, my responsibility, therefore your responsibility, is to bring others along in the planning process. So when I say that strategic planning is the slowest way to raise money, it's inclusive of this journey of bringing folks along the pathway to help them understand the plan that you're trying to enact. For those that just walked into the room, if you need to download the presentation, you can quickly pull out your phone, zoom in, and scan the QR code on the screen. And while you're doing that, we'll wrap up the first strategy. The first topic here. So at the end of the day, while folks will tell you, and they are right, that you need a strategic plan, some will tell you a business plan. I tend to lean on a strategic plan for nonprofits. At the end of the day, I need you to understand that this will always be the slowest way to raise money. Doesn't matter how mature your organization is, doesn't matter how long it's been around, it really doesn't matter how good you are at your job, how clear your vision is, it will always be slow. One particular example I'll share with you is when I was leading a team leading our team, and we were pursuing a multi-million dollar round of funding. I was very clear about what I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure that we innovated our programs for our youth. But what I knew is that we needed to innovate from our current place, which we were doing really, really well. And so that process started out as a meeting with my team twice a week. And we began that journey of just thinking through the evolution of our program and our plan. And meeting twice a week led to us ultimately completing our plan over a 7 to 8 month period. That plan was inclusive of, and that timeline was inclusive of us obviously working on the plan, but actually inclusive of completing the master grant application as well for that particular program. And so it's a process. And as a leader, I really want to encourage you and impress upon you the idea of just settling into this concept that if you're going to do a plan, and you should, it takes time. Don't rush it. Don't feel pressured to get something produced or published because your board says so, or because your friend has their plan produced, or competitors have their plans produced. Really, you got to focus on your organization. It takes time. It's a process. And the beautiful thing about strategy and planning and those conversations that take place is that every day that you meet with your team and you take a fresh look at your plan from yesterday, you see something different, you refine it, and it just gets better. It's like wine. If you let it sit, it just gets better over time. And you're going to want that process, but it is the slowest way to raise money. The second fastest way to raise money is through performance. This tends to shock a lot of people, and a lot of people really don't have a reaction to this when I put this up there because it's not something that you would think that would be a part of the fundraising process. So I'm going to talk about performance within the context of an existing mature organization and a startup new organization. At the end of the day, the goal is to raise money. You need money to pay the bills. You need money to pay your staff, pay yourself, to pay I don't know, your internet bill, buy supplies, pay for the program, etc. You cannot operate a program without money. You can't operate your program off of $500 from Walmart. That's not happening. It's not true. It's fake news. Stop lying. You need tons of money. Now, part of the way you get money is to perform, to do the work. So for mature organizations, and when I say mature organizations, I'm talking about organizations that have let's say over $500,000 in a budget, millions of dollars in a budget, been around for a while, you know that you can unlock money by doing the work. And what I mean by doing the work is fulfilling the obligation within the grant proposal that you submitted. You say that you're going to serve X number of kids, you're going to graduate X number of kids, you're going to place them, retain them, do the work, all right? When you do the work, here's the secret funders don't tell you, but you're going to hear it today. When you do the work, and if you do it effectively and you're on schedule, and you do it on par, you unlock money a lot faster. Okay? Now, As a part of this, and I'm going to get to the newbies in a minute, as a part of this, I need you to write down this idea, the 90-30 rule. The 90-30 rule. The 90-30 rule says, and this is a principle I teach to all my clients, in the first 90 days of your fiscal year or the funding cycle of a major grant, you're going to try to achieve 30% of your stated goals. Within the first 90 days of your fiscal year, or the funding cycle of that major funder, you're going to strive very hard to achieve 30% of your goal. If you have stated a goal of serving 100 kids in a fiscal year, then by the end of the first quarter, you should have served, graduated, completed roughly around 33, 35 kids. Why does this matter? This matters because nonprofits have a tendency of being behind schedule, a dollar short, and a minute late for everything. This is a business that you're running. You don't own it, but you're operating a business. And if you're going to operate your nonprofit like a business, then you have to treat it as such. Funders want to see their money spent down on time, not at the last minute, right? So it's for those of you that spend money in the last 2 months trying to get rid of money just so you can get money for next year, stop it because it doesn't work. And after a while, it catches up with you. But this is a class about how to raise money fast, right? If you're going to raise money fast, especially for next year, I just told you, raising money from a strategy takes a good 6 to 9 months. That's slow. That means that if you do your job well in the first quarter, which is how many months? 3 months, it is possible. There's a strong possibility that you can unlock money in 3 months for next fiscal year. The psychology of a funder says that if nonprofit ABC has met 30% or more of their goals in the first quarter, then it is highly likely that they are on pace to meet or exceed their goals for the entire fiscal year. By the time the second quarter ends, they are already finishing up or getting ready to release their next RFP for the next fiscal year. And who do you think they're going to call or email or text, and listen to those words, call, email, or text, to apply for the next round of funding? Those organizations who are on par of performing well. So as I was leading a multi-million dollar nonprofit for years, that was one of the secrets I learned really, really quick, that if we do well, we manage well, we unlock money really, really fast for next year. That means I can begin projecting, I can begin hiring, I can begin strategizing around money that has yet to come, but will come because we have been performing well. Does that make sense to everybody? For the newbies in the room who say, well, we just started. We've been around for a year, 2 years, 3 years. I want to teach you something my mother taught me, and it relates to newbie nonprofits. So about 2015, I graduated with my doctorate degree, and my mom said to me she couldn't make it um, to the ceremony. She said to me, "I just want you to know something, that your doctorate degree, that's my degree." Now I've heard that growing up. If you had a black mother, you know what that means. That's mine, right? and so I'm in my feelings like, what you talking about, man? I paid X number of dollars for this, and I sacrificed years of my life for this. What you talking about? She said, listen. I didn't contribute to anything you've done over the past 4 years. I didn't do anything for you. You on your own, got your own family. However, for the first 18 years of your life, who took care of you? Who put a roof over your head? Who put food on the table? Who took you to the after school programs? Who gave you this blueprint of how to think? So then she says, that's my degree. All right. Now, what's the lesson in that, and why does it matter to newbies? Well, it's a huge lesson in that. What my mother was saying is that my initial investment in you has mushroomed into this amazing outcome. A kid that was able to pay for college and get through his undergrad, then get a master's, and then earn a doctorate degree, the first in the family, and then start a business and do this and do that. And while my mother was only invested in the first 18 years financially, that was the seed that has led to what she sees now. All right. Now, I need you to understand this story because it matters to newbies, and this is also what we do for mature organizations. If you're new, that means that you just started or you haven't had any major revenue or no major performance. You, as a newbie, don't have any way to raise money through performance, right? However, if you listen to my mother, she just gave you the blueprint. Provide a seed and invest. So For those of you that pursue those Walmart grants and those Target grants and those community grants to go make sandwiches, give away socks, book bags, etc., you might want to consider realigning those dollars to a different purpose. It looks good on the gram, right? To be out there handing out stuff and everybody give you a high five and you tired at the end of the day and you serve the community. But what really did you do? Because if you didn't give out socks, somebody else would have. So you're not that necessary in that way. I want to encourage you to rethink how you utilize those dollars. When you start to get your small grants, your Walmart grant for $500, your Target grant for 1,000, your Home Depot grant for 1,500, maybe a community grant for 2,500, and you're excited. Let's say you got $10,000. Going to encourage you to do a couple of things. Number one, tithe, if you believe in that, right? Number two, pay yourself, even if it's just a couple of dollars for gas. You need to start to establish the psychology of paying for talent. Who's the chief talent within your organization? You, the executive director. But then number three, here's the key. Here's the key for performance. Utilize a portion of those dollars to invest in other competitors or providers that do similar work. Now, I've heard, particularly in this group online, I don't want to share what I do. I don't want people to copy what I do. There's nobody that does what I do. That's a lie. It's not true. And you're too small to copy. So that mentality has to kind of shift, right? The reason I'm telling you to invest in organizations that do similar work is because, as Pat Clark said, that degree is my degree. My seed has led to everything that you have. Therefore, you're going to take that same psychology from Pat and you're going to invest out of your $10,000 budget, 5,000 to an organization that's better than you, that's bigger than you, that's more mature than you. You're going to give a grant to them to support their youth program because they do similar work as you. And guess what happens when you do that, when you give a grant? You're going to require reports on a quarterly basis. What are they doing with your money to make change in your community? And now every quarter, you get in those reports. Your results are now my results. Because if it wasn't for my little $5,000, you wouldn't have been able to buy those footballs or those computers or those bus passes or those backpacks, or it wouldn't have paid for that teacher who needed to work overtime. It's not much, but it's a seed that mushrooms into great results. And then it builds a relationship. So as you start to pursue grants on your own, what are you going to report out? Well, our partners and I have done the following. You run down the line. You start to report out on results that are competitive to other organizations, and now you look more attractive. This is no different than what you've done when you were an intern, right? You were an intern for a couple of months, you did a couple of projects that really weren't that great, but you figured out how to sell it so that you can get on to the next job. It's the same way in your nonprofit. It's the second fastest way to raise money. Now, with that $5,000, before I move on, I need you to understand what's happening now. Some of you are moonlighting as nonprofit leaders. You have a full-time job, so you're bivocational, right? And many of you don't have the time, capacity, energy to work your job and build your nonprofit. This strategy I just shared with you allows you to expand your capacity. You cannot do it on your own. Does that work? Let me give you guys one more secret part of this. Let's say you decide not to invest into another organization. For some of you that have that are going to take seriously what I'm suggesting about no longer spending money on ham sandwiches, socks, etc., you can also spend that $5,000 to pay per diem staff to execute your program in the evening. Now, I can't afford staff. I said per diem. I didn't say put them on full-time salary. They're not even part-time. In your city, there are tons of people who moonlight as Uber drivers, and they hate it, but they got to do what they got to do. I'm willing to tell you, I'm willing to bet that there are people in your city who would love to give back, who would love to work in your nonprofit for a per diem, after school, after hours, executing your program, or whatever it is, while you're busy working. Again, as Pat said, their results are now your results. I need you guys to start thinking different. Because when you start to perform like this, it starts to get the attention of funders because now they're looking at your capacity. The criticisms foundations have of new nonprofits is that you don't have capacity. You don't have any history, no experience. With this secret I just shared with you, you just built all of that. It takes time, but it definitely works. And I got to tell you, mature organizations do this all the time. When we are too busy, too stressed in to do stuff, we invest, we partner, and expands capacity tremendously. As you might have guessed, the fastest way to raise money is based upon who you know. Remember when I said that the funder is releasing the next RFP, they're going to call, email, or text. That was a signal to let you know that communication is key. Relationships are key. It does matter who you know. It does matter who knows you. It does matter who has your cell phone number, who can text you and say, hey, I'm going to need you to apply for this. I can't tell you how many times I've been fortunate and blessed to be exposed to opportunities over coffee, love coffee dates, over lunch, as I told you this summer or this year, over text messages. Had a colleague of mine, friend of mine, we were texting. He had an opportunity for several millions of dollars, and he had about $800,000 for Connecticut, which is where I'm from. I said, great. We emailed back and forth a couple of times. Boom. We contributed to the application. We got it. I have a friend of mine. We go out to lunch once every 2 months just to shoot the breeze, check in. 2 hours easy. In the last 10 minutes of every lunch, she is a funder at United Way, one of the United Ways in Connecticut, and she will always tell me, oh, yeah, I'm going to need you to apply for this grant. It's coming up. We'll just take care of it. We got you. Can't tell you how many times that happens. 15-minute cup of coffee with a colleague of mine. I was rebuilding an organization and I was just trying to rebrand it because we stunk, right? And I was the new guy and I had to fix it. And it was just a regular coffee of mine. This particular time she rushed me and it was kind of weird. I'm like, okay. She said, we need to talk. Just get out the way. I don't got long. So I'm gonna need you to apply for this. It's a 500 million. Make sure y'all look out for this opportunity. It's gonna come out in 2 months. And she left. Just left. Can't tell you how many times that happens. It does matter who you know. But it's a process. I mean, notice what's happening here, right? That we start with a strategy, takes about 6 to 9 months. Once we have our strategy, then we go start doing performance, we start doing the work, and then the relationships cultivate. It's a journey. This is how you raise millions of dollars. By doing so, this increases your income. You're able to pay your bills, pay your staff, cover program operations. You're able to increase your options, right? Service quality, right? You're not going to be the same organization you are today that you will be in 5 years. You want to get better. You can't get better if you don't have money. You don't want to be dingy. You don't want to be regular. You want to continue to innovate. But it's hard to innovate when you're trying to figure out how to pay the bills or you don't know if you're going to make payroll next week. And then with new money comes expansion. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to encourage you to connect with me, but I do want to pause here, turn it over to you guys for Q&A. Does that work? So we got about 20, maybe 25 minutes of Q&A. The floor is yours. What do you do with that money? So within any business, it is plausible that you can do all the work yourself, right? Think about construction, the construction trade. You have a GC who's hired to build a building or build a deck or build a baseball field. The GC, in and of itself, that person is not responsible for nailing a nail into a wall or getting the 2x4s. That GC subcontracts pieces of the work to people or businesses that he or she manages. In any business, it's the same. For nonprofits, I think a lot of nonprofits take on that pressure to believe that I got to do it myself. No, you don't. So if you, in an effort to get the work done, have to subcontract pieces of the work, you can call it a grant, a subcontract, a partnership, whatever you want to call it. If you need to do that to get the work done, then that's how it's done. That's a great question. Thank you for setting that up and teaming me up. So, for someone who is in a situation she talked about, there are a couple of things you got to think about. A couple of strategies that have worked for me to build relationships. Number one, I'm a big believer in roundtables. Roundtables are under the table, non-posted, discrete conversations like this conversation here that are happening with providers and funders all around your city about the topic you work on every single day. And around these tables, people are talking about solutions and funding opportunities. Those roundtables, if you can get a hold of them, are opportunities for you to be active, to be present, to be seen, to be a partner, a contributor. One of the leads that you can look into to find out what roundtables exist is check in with your local United Way, particularly if they fund, keyword, if they fund the category of work that you do. You want to find out who some of the program people are, the funders are, and if they facilitate or participate in any roundtables, particularly around youth, homeless, whatever the case may be. You want to start showing up. Your governor, your mayor, they have roundtables too with other providers. If you can't get a hold of them, look at the big boys in your city, the large nonprofits, and start to figure out from lower staff to high level staff who you can get a hold of, have lunch with, and say, hey, is there a roundtable coming up about this that you know of that I can be a part of? If so, can you just invite me? Right? So that's number one. Number two, in terms of building relationships, it does take time. Again, you got to figure out where the funders are spending their time, where they hanging out. So you're going to have to figure out who has your money. All right. This is part of the fundraising plan. Who has your money? Yeah, it's going to be the big boys, it's going to be the mid-sized foundations and the small ones, but who has your money? Number two, when you find out who has your money, you got to have to be clear about how much money you need or want. If you're going to a funder and say, I need $5,000 for my program, they're going to dismiss you because no program costs $5,000. Unless you're asking them to close a specific gap, they can tell off the bat you don't know what you're talking about. If you need a budgeting class, you need to call me and you can go through my budgeting class or someone's budgeting class to understand how to properly budget. So, number one, who has your money? Number two, how much money do you need? But then number three, who's going to go get it? Right? At this juncture, because of her question, I'm going to recommend you go get it. And that go get it means to go and reach out and have coffee with folks. I keep continue to talk about coffee because coffee is a cheap date. Coffee is a way just to meet people in the morning, afternoon, or after work, and it's just a conversation. Right? Some of you have conversations over drinks, over lunch, etc. Whatever it takes, you got to get people out of the office or on Zoom. The last thing I'll share with you, how to build relationships, is to leverage your board. If you have a terrible board, you got to get rid of them. But there are a couple of ways, a couple of things I want you to think about when you're developing your board or redeveloping your board. You need people on your board who are decision makers outside of your nonprofit. These are people who are business owners, leaders, etc., who have the ability to say yes to a check, to say yes to an idea. All right. The second characteristic I care deeply about for a board is a board member who's willing to provide oversight. They are your boss. All right. But then number three, you want a board member who's willing to get or share their treasure. That means that they are willing to share their money and or their relationships. Now, if there's time at the end of the rest of the Q&A, somebody has to remind me to talk about a listening party. That is one of the fastest way to build relationships. I'll get into that later, but I'll stop there in response to your question. Did that help? Awesome. Thank you for that amazing question. Yes, ma'am. One of the things that Vanessa talked about and you talked about that I didn't get into about these relationships is the reverse, where you are partnering with a big organization and you talked about it, where you get a piece of a big pie. That is a huge, huge opportunity for small nonprofits. The idea of you getting $1 million grant being new is highly unlikely, and even for new, mature organizations where you're jumping into a new space, it's hard. One of the most effective ways is for you to subcontract under someone else. Because of those relationships, it's easier to convince. What's your name? Tawanda. It's easier for me to convince you to partner with me than me to convince this foundation to give us a grant. And if you have $1 million grant, you decide to give me 50,000. That's huge, just because of the relationship. So please take into account what Tawanda and Vanessa they share. Now, I do want to talk about the listening party. Tiffany talked about a million people giving $7 and some change. I want to talk about how to make that a reality, if you don't mind. Does that help? Is that okay? All right. So, a listening party, this is part strategy and relationship that I'm about to share with you. Not so much performance. This is going to be a hand to hand combat strategy and an individual giving strategy I want to leave with you. A listening party is when people gather virtually or in person to do what's happening today. Today, you decided to attend my workshop and you're listening to me and we're engaging. A listening party is very similar, where you are presenting your cause, your mission, your purpose. Some people make it elaborate where it's a full out party, drinks, food, finger foods, it's music, whatever the case may be. It can happen virtually and in person. You see, we're in the room. I have the camera set up over there, just a little tiny thing, and I have my Bluetooth headset where folks can hear me at the end of this particular recording, so it can easily become a hybrid thing, and it doesn't have to be complicated. But what matters most is that you need to get people to the party. All right. Now, with the listening party, for it to be effective, you need people to show up. So we need to figure out how to get 100 people in the room. It begins and ends with your board. All right. You need to approach your board to be a part of this process, and you're going to ask your board to invite 5 people each to come to a listening party. You're going to do the same thing. You're going to invite 5 people. The intent is to have people just gather, show up online, show up in person, just to gather after work for just some light fare, light drinks, to have a conversation about the vision of your organization. During this conversation, after people have mingled and danced and talked and ate food, you just want to gather around and you're going to give a talk. Now, what are you going to talk about? You're going to talk about your organization. There are 5 questions that I tend to recommend my clients think about answering when they're given a presentation of any type about the organization. Those 5 questions goes like this. Where are we right now as an organization? It's a truth-telling serum. Where are we right now financially, operationally, politically? It could be good, bad, or indifferent. We're doing really, really well, but we're struggling here right now, right? You want to be honest, about what's the reality of your organization. The second question that you want to address in your presentation is, well, despite where we are right now, this is where we're going. I'm super excited. I know we've done well the past 12 months, but there's like another level of phase to this, and I'm super excited to share with you. The last 12 months have been tough, but I think we've weathered the storm. So this is what's next. So we start with where we at right now. We go to where we're going, which is your vision, right? And it's not the vision statement, it's a vision for what tomorrow's going to look like, a better tomorrow. The third question that you're going to answer is, well, how are we going to get to this vision? Because people need practical steps, no more than 2 or 3. Right? Big picture, crazy ideas that you're going to enact. The fourth question is, how do we get there? How do we make that happen? Right? So it's more detailed. And then the last question that you're going to answer is by when? You're going to answer these 5 questions during your listening party. You can have a presentation like me, you can just have a talk. It doesn't matter. What I think matters most when you do a listening party is that you do it based upon your personality, because we're all different in this room. We all think different, we present different, we feel different. For me, I can go either way. I can go presentation, no presentation. I can be in your face and engaging, or I can be standoffish behind a podium. It doesn't matter. You got to find your groove, and that's really, really important. Now, there is one last question I did not bring up in the listening party that really, really is important, and it gets to Tiffany's point that she was making. You have to close your presentation with an ask. You spent the past 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes talking about this idea, this vision, this hope that you foresee for the organization, and you want people to take action. You want a call to action. And so I'm going to ask you, if you can, pull out your cell phones and need some help doing some math, pull out your calculator, and help me kind of close this presentation. So we're going to uh, ask everybody in this room to give $2,022. And this is going to help us serve the kids in our community, keep them out of prison, reduce recidivism. Y'all know the buzzwords, right? Now, when I say $2,022, some people in the room that you have been invited to the listening party might laugh. They might say, I don't got that. There might be a few people that will pull out the check or the card and give it to you. There's not going to be many people that's going to give you that money up front. There's going to be more people that are going to be saying to themselves, man, they crazy. I don't got that. Now comes your job. Your job is not to convince those people to give you $2,022. Your job is to teach people how to give you money. Very similar to what Tiffany talked about. So there are a couple of strategies. You got your calculator out? So what's 2022 divided by 2? All right. So there are some of you that might not be able to give $2,022, but there might be a few of you that can give $1,011 every 6 months. That will help you meet the goal that we're trying to achieve. And if that doesn't work for you, who else has a calculator out? All right. What's 2022 divided by 4? How much? 500. So some of you may feel more comfortable giving $505.50 every quarter. That might be more feasible for you and your business. But then there's some of you that need other options. Who else has a calculator out? What's 2022 divided by, let's do 12. Some of you may feel comfortable with $168.50. All right, that might be more feasible and affordable. But here's my favorite, y'all. Who has a calculator out? Last person. One more person. What's 2022 divided by 26? How much? 78. But give me the exact change. Is it? To trust but verify. So 2022 divided by 26. What is it? 77, 77, man. You okay? You got it. You got it. Now, the reason why I went through the exercise and we ended with 77, 77 is because, and why do you think I went to 26? Where do you think I got that from? No. There it is. There it is. There it is. This is what you got to do. You have to teach people how to give you money. We asking for $2,022, but we're going to actually give people options, and the goal is to get people in a position where they can see an easier way to give. Every 2 weeks, can you give 77 dollars and 77 cents? Don't tell me you don't have that, because if you just don't spend on Amazon for a couple of weeks, stop eating out for a couple of weeks, stop drinking, don't buy that purse or those shoes, I'm confident you can find $77.77 every 2 weeks. In fact, for some of you, thank you, that's your tithe. Why not invest in us, right? And at the end of a 26-week giving period, what do you have? $2,022, right? And so for you and for anybody in this room, it's not about the amount. I mean, the amount matters. It's about how you teach people to give. I'm going to close this presentation by encouraging you to never be cheap. Your program isn't cheap. If you're going to do this listening party idea, it needs to be well over four figures. It needs to be aspirational. Why? Because you need money to do your job. Number two, everybody's not going to give the higher amount that you give, but they're going to do their best to catch up. If you raise the bar, they're going to raise their giving. If you lower the bar, they're going to lower their giving. $77.77 every 2 weeks. Yeah, I would say they all matter. You should be pursuing diverse revenue streams from foundations, from corporations, from individuals, from families, from businesses, from partnerships, and yes, from earned income. So this is a strategy that I would recommend all of you guys use. And I will tell you that earned income tends to be the least pursued opportunity for nonprofits. It's less than 5% of every nonprofit's budget. It should be much higher. It's an opportunity there for everybody.